Thank you for joining Wars of the Rosies. And this is Proof of Truth by Way of Mysticism by Soror Genevieve Mckay. An article from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 13, Number 1, February 1935. Proof of Truth by Way of Mysticism by Soror Genevieve Mckay. Says the cynic, well, all I know is what I read in the papers. That pet sarcasm is familiar to us all. Says the materialist, well, all I know is what I may observe by the use of my physical faculties. These two sayings, of the cynic and of the materialist, make interesting contrast with the saying of another two, of the religiousist and of the mystic. The cynic and the materialist place quite restricted limits upon beliefs, which they consider credible. Not so the religiousist or the mystic. The cynic avers that all information, both that of experience as well as that of tradition, is probably a distortion due to the peculiar tendency of the human brain to interpret instead of merely to record. The materialist, unattuned to the sweet, distant harmonies of the intangible, avers that nothing exists which is not cognizable to the human faculties. The cynic and the materialist, then, though varying somewhat in the import of their unbelief, are both spiritual unbelievers. Opposite to them are the religiousist and the mystic. The religioust's greatest asset is his faith, whether he be an Oriental who believes that Confucius contains all knowledge and wisdom, whether he be of the Catholic faith and believes implicitly the divinely bestowed authority of the holy fathers of his church, or whether he be of the Latter-day Saints, better known as Mormons, and believes his church to be the oldest in existence, and his God to be a person with body parts and passions. All religiously believe in the divine authorization of their peculiar church organization and the infallibility of their peculiar leader. The religiousist is a spiritual believer who believes on faith. The mystic is also a spiritual believer. He believes because he knows. He may have stepped up from the ranks of the religiousist, or he may have come from the list of the cynics or the materialist, but attaining the eminence of the mystic, he will remain there always. For after recovering his first proof of the intangible via his intuitive faculties, he will thereby change in his spiritual beliefs only to the degree that his spiritual ascension produces new proofs. The mystic may have arisen by only a few shallow steps, or he may have ascended into transcendental realms. But he demonstrates at every point the proof of the truth there presented. The calm, unbiased of his mind is his ever-constant guard against unproven truth. The urgent quest of his mind ever challenges him to yet higher esoteric explorations. The upsurge of his soul follows every experience, transports him the more easily to each more distant domain. We know that every human being arriving at a point of maturity in life has acquired his own particular perception of the universe, and has made some conscious or unconscious adjustment of thought to this perception. If his perception is that of the cynic or the materialist, the scope of his cyclical perceiving is foreshortened, for if he fails to comprehend that psychic proof is personal proof, necessarily, and therefore is not transferable, he will ignore these statements about cyclical manifestation, and blindly assert, I don't have to believe that, which settles the matter for him completely. If the domain of psychic functioning lies dormant within him, he may be totally unaware of its existence. In fact, he may smile indulgently, as at the phantasms of a child, when the subject of spiritual powers is presented for his consideration. For the attitude of inwardness belongs not at all to the cynic or the materialist. The religiousist adjustment of thought trends towards a spiritual perception of the universe. True, it is bound by conformity. It has not the untrammeled exploratory character of the mystic's perception. Yet it gives him a comforting assurance of rightness, a code to obey, forgiveness for repented sins, a definite heaven to be obtained. Through church guidance, It is quite common for him to completely surrender personal opinion to the dictates of a creed. He may even proudly relate his conviction that creeds are divinely bestowed upon man through great leaders, and that the common man must not embark upon the desecrating practice of proving or unproving matters for himself. In his creedal doctrine, the religiousist finds relief from troubling doubt, release from responsibility, and a comforting reliance upon his religion as upon a mother who gives him all. It is frequently observed how effortless is the way of the spiritual unbeliever, and even of the religiousist, by contrast with the way of the mystic. And yet it is easily observed that every step of the mystic's way is cherished by him. He could not turn back if he would, and more, he would not turn back if he could. He shocks alike the unbeliever whose area of consciousness does not permeate the realms beyond the mundane, and the religious believer whose beliefs, because they are without evidence, must be classed as superstitions. He even attracts the condemnation of the nondescriptive class of persons who, though neither cynical nor dogmatic, yet feel that creeds and dogmas were given by God to the masses of men to prevent them from investigating psychically. These nondescripts even assume that God did not intend men to probe into his affairs, and so he gave them leaders to propound codes, to set down church laws for them in order that men might not attempt the sacrilege of investigating about God or the pristine purity of his laws. And so, although the mystic has inner proof of truth, although he has personal evidence to substantiate his beliefs, although he remains undogmatic, accepting as truth only those facts which he has demonstrated, nevertheless, and in spite of all his exactness, he needs must always be branded as superstitious, for the invisible empire he learns to enter is unseen by the uninitiated. Thus, practicing his art of apprehending, the mystic works on towards achieving his own illumination, the unhampered creative play of his intuitive perceptions produces universal consciousness within him for the beautification of his life, soaring above and beyond empirical knowledge. His soul evokes eternal verities. In his cloistered hours and peaceful exhilaration, he touches sublimity. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.